Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 750,000 times in over 145 countries and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage.
This is episode 225 of the Australian Hiker Podcast. And in this week's episode, it's our annual industry interview episode. We hope you enjoy. Before we get into today's episode, if you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the Support Us page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. As we've been doing since 2017, we make it a habit of catching up with industry suppliers, importers and manufacturers just to find out what's been going on within the industry, particularly in relation to hiking. In this year's episode, we managed to catch up with 4 industry suppliers just to find out what's been going on. At the end of each interview, we'll have a quick discussion about what the key points raised were. And at the end of the episode, we'll talk about the common theme that seems to be appearing year by year about what's happening with the outdoor industry. If you go to the show notes for episode 225 on the Australian Hiker website, you'll find a series of images that relate to what we're talking about as the interviews go through, just to help make a bit more sense of what you're listening to. Okay, so for this interview, we're talking to Danielle from Cedar Summit Distribution. Danielle, thank you for taking your time to talk with us.
Hi, thanks for having me on board again.
Okay, so I believe Cedar Summit is bringing out a new series of their packing cells. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, so as you'd be aware, Cedar Summit, their heritage started our fin stuff sacks and dry sacks. It's been a very big category for us with multiple products from your really burly hydraulic packs right down to your super ultralight nano dry bags and ultra mesh stuff sacks. And this year it's the first time we've actually looked at the entire category as a whole and overhauling the entire lot. So refreshing every single product in the range in some way.
So when you say refreshing, I must admit I do own quite a large number of Cedar Summit dry sacks and packing cells. What's really changed? Because I found them to be really good, in all honesty.
Absolutely, and this is obviously why they've held up for so many years, because they are so robust. So what we've actually looked at doing, and it has taken us a number of years, is actually improving our environmental and social impact. So we've looked to not only meet the regulations and outdoor industry standards, but align with retailer requirements, market aspirations, and bring sustainable stories to retail as a hard good brand. So how we're doing that is in a number of ways. Obviously, our first is to actually measure our carbon footprint. So as a whole company, so that's obviously going to take a bit of a while to get to that sort of measurement. Our building in Perth is actually run on a solar system. We've got a cycle commute challenge between all of our staff as well. So there's 20 plus people that cycle into work every day. So our goals as a company are very much changing to be more aligned to what we've been doing internally that we may not have, been promoting as much. So our first goal is to be 100% Blue Sign approved textiles by 2030, 100% non-PFC water repellent finishes by 2025. So you would have noticed all of our gaiters are now PFC water repellent finishes on all of our gaiters. That was launched this year. And then 90% primary, 50% secondary materials, RSC certified recycled materials. or sustainable by 2030. So, and then obviously we have our responsible down certification for our sleeping bags and quilts.
I was going to say, what you mentioned, Blue Seal. What was Blue Seal? What does that mean?
Oh, but sorry, no, Blue Sign.
Blue Sign, sorry.
So Blue Sign are a third-party accreditation. So it basically covers social compliance at sort of the mill level, exploring dye solutions using less water, ensures that, the chemicals that we're using to create the products, like the fabrics used, meet strict consumer safety and environmental requirements, and that they're produced in a resource conserving way.
Okay.
So we already have access to those fabric and mill partners as well. So, and then on top of that is then obviously using a chain of custom to track recycled raw materials through the supply chain. So, making sure that we're creating, a very sustainable flagship product that doesn't compromise on performance.
Okay. Now, I know over the years, particularly with things like the packing bags, you've had the UltraSil versions, and then you've had the standard versions. Are you still going to maintain those two sort of layers of product? Absolutely.
So on top of that, we've also decided just to round out our conversation on the social compliance and also the environmental story. We're looking at the evolution of our packaging as well. So all of our packaging will change to a renewable, recyclable, compostable box as well. So this is adopted, the Australian recycling label standard as well.
Okay, that's good.
So it'll be curbside recyclable and sustainably sourced materials on the bags. And then from there, what we've done is we've just looked to streamline our range of core products. So, 90% of our heavy duty bags was sold out of using the Big River dry bags. The same for our lightweight range, which is the 70 denier lightweight dry bags. 65% came from the standard lightweight range, and out of the UltraSil, that was again 80%. Compared to something, like the nano dry bags, which was like a small slither of 10% of our range. So what we've done is then refined the range. We've also refreshed the colours to have a more natural landscape inspired by the Outback range. So the colours aren't quite so poppy.
I must admit, I don't mind the bright colours.
Oh, there's still going to be bright colours. Don't worry, they've just got a more natural hue to them. So our orange colour is called it's either spicy orange or fiery red. So there is still some brights throughout. It's just slightly toned down in some areas, and then we've made it easier to understand. As a range. So going from your heavyweight bags to lightweight, ultralight, and then our EVAC bags, which use the eVent fabric on the bottom so that you're able to, the compression bags, you're able to compress the air out of them. And that's sort of where there is one new product in there. We're launching a EVAC compression bag using the Big River dry bag material. So that's quite an exciting one, particularly for bike packers out there, because internally our team they go on bike packing trips quite regularly. I know Kirsty, one of our other brand managers, she's got a Gutsy Girl film out at the moment, bike packing around Tasmania, and the compromise that she has to make is, do you do a Big River bag? But you kind of have to squidge and roll, and it's great because you can obviously lash that to the sides of your wheels of your bike. Or do you go an EVAC compression dry bag that's not quite, if something really harsh comes upon it, you might rip and tear it open, but you can squidge everything down, and it mostly, will keep everything dry and maybe lash it to the top part of your bike. So by having an EVAC compression heavy duty bag made out of the Big River material, you're really creating that perfect mix of what you're after in terms of a heavy duty bag that's going to keep everything dry, but you can still compress everything out. So bike packing, sea kayaking, overlanding, motorcycling, perfect for all those sort of activities.
Now, I suppose looking into the same sort of category, and this may not be the same category, but it seems so to me. What about things like the pack covers? Do they fall into the same sort of category, or are they something totally different?
Oh, I'm gonna break your heart here when I say that they're actually being discontinued.
Oh,
yes, unfortunately, yeah, there will be no more. Pack covers are staying the same, but pack liners will be exiting out of our range.
Okay, all right. No, that's good. That's good to hear. So you're not revamping the pack covers. Or are you?
Not this time round.
Yeah.
They definitely will get a refresh. Obviously, once we have these materials embedded, it'll only be a matter of time. But I'm sure you can appreciate the number of SKUs that this is sort of, around that 300 mark of product SKUs that, we've had to individually design and make every single, not only the product, but the packaging, the photography, the artwork, the design, all the way through. So, baby steps in the right direction. Let's not overhaul absolutely everything all at once.
No, that's fair enough.
So a couple of the updates on the product itself that perhaps I know we're limited on time, so I'll just quickly shout out a couple of fun ones. The Big River dry bag, we've updated it to have some nice lashing points on either side and a grab handle on the larger ones. So it's still the same excellent great Big River dry bag, but at least now there's lashing points on either side.
So they're used for more expeditions where you can tie them to a boat or tie them to a vehicle and not have them run around the place.
Correct. So, and a triple coated base on the bottom as well, so that really gives you that extra security and protection.
Have you found that from a sizing point of view, you talked about the different materials before, but is there a popular size or it really varies depending on the range of bags?
It does vary depending on each of the bags, most certainly, depending on what the use is. It's no surprise with our range, if you're after a compression sack to replace, obviously, an exhausted sleeping bag, then you're going to try and find, we sell a lot more of the smaller ones than the larger ones. However, then, when we're talking about a Big River, you're selling, slightly more of the larger ones overall as sort of gear hauling bags. So, and then on top of that, a lot of our bags, or particularly the 70D and the Big River, will now have a little toggle on the bottom of the bag, little Hypalon tab, and then you can purchase a dry bag sling, so that if you did want to use it just as an over-the-shoulder sling bag, we now have that extra adaptability to use it with the D-ring clip at the top.
That could probably be also useful for rock climbing and things, I can imagine.
Yes, yeah. Although if you're planning on doing a bigger expedition style, canyoning type product, then the Hydraulic Pro dry bag is definitely where you're going to get quite a bit of excitement from it.
Okay, that's good. So when are we expecting to see these new ranges hitting the market?
We'll be hitting likely around February or late January if we're very, very lucky with the shipping. Shipping's been quite a delayed thing for all manufacturers, particularly getting into Australia. But February is when we're definitely aiming to see these arrive.
Now, I know over the last couple of years, one of the questions I've asked people that we've interviewed has been, what's the impact of COVID? Now, I think given that at the moment we look like we're coming out of it reasonably well, have you found the industry starting to get back to normal, whatever that means?
We didn't really find that there wasn't. There was definitely something happening, but it definitely was a skew of normal. What we generally found was that, you lock down people and tell them they can't go overseas and they can't go, gallivanting off around the globe finding exciting adventures, but people still want to go away and leave the house. And if you lock someone out, into their house for 2 weeks plus at a time, the first thing they want to do when they get out is go somewhere. So we found over COVID that a lot of people, similar to the bike industry, where a lot of people took up, cycling to get out of the house on a daily basis, but camping and four-wheel driving definitely improved dramatically. So everyone chose to take an adventure locally at home. Definitely saw that in WA as well. So everyone sort of chose to do local adventures, and fortunately we're in the right business selling products to go camping with to make your life more comfortable when going on those adventures. So for us, it was more of a trying to keep supply of the products that people wanted.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's always the thing as well, between shipping if the stuff is coming from overseas to sourcing materials and finding that labour's a bit light on sometimes in the manufacturing process. But
precisely.
I think we probably, like a lot of other people, when we went through the first lockdown and I was working from home for 6 months, I spent a lot of money online buying things, including hiking gear.
Yes. You stop everyone from going to the coffee shop, buying lunch at work, and going out to dinners every weekend, and suddenly everyone had this surplus of money to spend online. The other exciting new product that's going to become our hero product, definitely in our dry bag world, and where you'll see a lot of marketing coming through for next year. So our designers, they like to, basically create the best and the best, and this product is definitely right up there. It is definitely a pinnacle product in itself. So what we've created is what we're calling the Hydraulic Pro Dry Pack. So it is a fully submersible duffel dry bag for the most extreme conditions. So IPX8 rated submersion, so that means it can go to, I think it's 10 metres, but I think we're only going to claim 4 metres underwater for about 10 minutes without a drop of water entering the bag because of its airproof, waterproof zipper, super abrasion resistant fabric, welded seams, and also an ergonomic carry and lashing system as well. So similar to what you see on our current duffels, how you can create different lashing options, this is definitely the case with this as well. So this sort of came out of an area of design that we looked at what people use these sort of bags for. So it's really epic adventures, overlanding, boating, water, ski, the extreme of the extreme. So this is not your everyday carry by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but it's gone through a lot of ideation. The team have put a lot of time into its design and making sure that it's burly enough to sit up by itself. So when you open a bag, it doesn't the sides don't collapse on you. The harness itself, it's comfortable to carry as a little short hauler. It doesn't have a waist belt because it's meant to be as a hauler, not a long carry sort of type bag. It'll come in there's 2 colours. It's either a grey and black or a pindan and zinnia colour, which is for laymen sort of an orange and burnt yellow colour. But the pinnacle of what we can create in terms of a fully submersible duffel for extreme adventures.
I was going to say, I'm looking at the images I've got here in front of me. They do look like they're a pretty robust sort of bag.
Yes, and definitely, I'm going to say unapologetically premium.
That's good. And I think, as you say, it's sort of, I suppose it's, the name Cedar Summit was born out of a mountaineering expedition, but certainly I think, looking at some of this range, as you say, a lot of this product would be useful in and around the water for boating and for as you say, for any adventure activity, regardless of whether it's hiking and camping or mountaineering or boating. So it's becoming it's a very versatile sort of product by the look of it.
Absolutely. Even, snow and Arctic adventures and where you need the brighter colour so that it's seen. So that, the key part of the whole component is the fact that we've got what's called the Tie-Zip product that is very premium. So, we're talking by the time it gets to a retail shop front from cost, you're looking at $100 plus.
Yeah.
So just in the zipper alone.
Yeah.
But the zipper is amazing. So we could have chosen a cheaper zipper, one that probably wouldn't have been quite as waterproof, but that's what we wanted. We wanted that premium product to suit what we were aiming to achieve. So this product's definitely not going to be for everyone, but for those expeditionists, trying not to say the other one, that want to go on these sort of adventures, that want to make sure 100% that their gear is going to be safe and sound inside, this is the bag they're going to be looking for.
Okay, so we've been talking to Danielle from Cedar Summit Distribution. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to talk to you.
So that was our interview with Danielle from Cedar Summit. And the thing that sort of really stuck with me was the focus from, in their case, talking about a range of packs and dry bags and packing cells. And for a lot of people, not really a sexy sort of item when you think about sleeping bags or tents or tracking poles. But I think it's interesting to see their vision, if you like, of, they're talking about making things environmentally friendly, they're talking about making things durable, and they're talking about making a high quality product to suit particular markets. So I think, Cedar Summit isn't just a company that looks after hikers, and in this episode they were certainly talking about making a product for bike packing, and talking about making product for people that are into canoeing, as well as mountaineering. And there's not just a range of pack covers or packing cells that they can, that suits everybody. There's a niche for everybody. And certainly some of the product that we're talking about, particularly product that's waterproof for down to 4 meters, particularly if you're into canoeing, having a product that, if the boat tips over, you're not going to lose everything, and it's not going to get soggy and wet, providing you fish it out reasonably quickly. So I think it's good to see that their focus is not so much let's just bring all this new product out, but let's look at what we've got and how can we make it better. And that includes, again, the packaging that goes with this product to make things better for the environment and better for our usage overall. So it's going to be good to see this product come out onto the market. I own many Cedar Summit packing cells, and they just last, and I'll just grab whatever particular size suits me for the adventure that I'm going through and doing. So it's going to be good to see this new product come onto the market later this year and towards early 2023. Okay, so for our next interview, I'd just like to welcome AJ from Campers Pantry. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us on.
Okay, so we've talked with AJ over the last few years about the Campers Pantry range of outdoor meals. So what's new or what's happening with Campers Pantry over the past 12 months and heading into the future?
So the past 12 months, we've been keeping up with the demand. So basically, we've had all the everyone coming out of lockdown and throwing the packs on and going hiking again, which is fantastic. So we're still growing organically, I suppose you'd say, and we are still a young company, so we still have areas to grow, and people still haven't heard of us, which is just how it is when you're the new kid on the block. And we have been listening to the customers. We get a lot of feedback about certain things, and so we have got some new products in the pipeline that we will be introducing shortly. I probably can't say too much about them, but we've got the chef ready to go to basically bring out some new cooking meals, dinners, and vegetarian, vegan, gluten, ticking those boxes for allergens where we can. And I don't know a date as yet when these will launch. It'll be this year. It'll be 2022 when these come out. And at the moment, we've got about 30 odd new products in the pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always hard, isn't it? I mean, I suppose most people tend to think about, oh, well, I can eat anything, so everyone else is the same. But there are a percentage of people within the population that are gluten intolerant or do have food allergies of some sort. And even just to the point of view of vegetarian, the vegetarian options often tend to be a bit light on and favouring the meat eaters. So it's good to see the outdoor companies catering for those people. Now, this is all within the freeze-dried range again, is it?
Yeah, it's all going to be 100% freeze-dry. So it's we still want to be lightweight. We still want to be able to be the lightweight player on the market. And, yeah, that's when you're doing short trips, it's not much of an issue. But as soon as you're doing some longer trips and you're carrying that much food, those grams do count. And that's, 100% freeze dried, local meats, so Tassie meats, Cape Grim, and those sort of things, ticking that box.
And just a reminder again, it is actually meat rather than meat substitute, isn't it?
Yeah. So the beef, the diced beef that we do, and the beef mince is all from Cape Grim. The chicken's all premium chicken breast. We put through a dicer and then freeze dry it. So it's just like you'd buy from your local IGA. It's all all premium grade. Comes back to life with so with the meat. If you're using that meat if you're cooking a trail meal, you can rehydrate the meat in cold water. It'll still rehydrate. And if we're cooking with it, we'll tend to strain it after we've rehydrated it and then throw it into a pan with a bit of oil just to brown it a bit before we then keep going with our cook. You can actually just put it into a pot. So if you're just doing like a soup or some sort of broth or one cook, a one pot wonder, you can just put it in. It's already pre-cooked. Before we freeze dry it, we pre-cook it in the factory, so it's all ready to go. Yeah, but it's all it's 100% real meat that you'd buy from your local butcher. Nothing, no corners cut there.
So, I suppose it's just a more generic question. I mean, is there any new and wonderful processes that the industry in general is doing, or has pretty much, the freeze dry industry, has it pretty much been more about getting good quality products or using good quality components and offering different meal offerings, and it's pretty much just it's how good the chef is what it comes down to?
Yeah, I think the quality is the main thing. That's what our feedback from our customers is. The ingredient listing is what they're looking at these days, and that's what we like to eat. So what we kind of when you come up with an idea, it's normally an idea that you want it yourself, and that's clean ingredients is what we're going to stick by there. So, and as far as the industry goes, freeze drying, it's been around for years. Nothing's really changed. Machinery's, the dryers have got bigger, but it's the same process. And one thing that is pretty exciting that we are working on that I can talk about because it's not too far off is we've got a new packet that it's basically a defence style packet which has all the air pulled out of it. To be able to do that, we need to have our product listed on there in a way that you can read it. And if you pull the air out of a bag like what we're using now, it wrinkles all the writing and you can't read. So the issue there is if someone does have an issue with one of the allergens and they can't read the bag properly, there could be something happen, out and about on a trail, which we don't want to see. So we're going to change our packaging over to this, basically an expedition style packet that has no air in it. It's vacuum sealed and it's forced with nitrogen. So it has a longer shelf life and fits. It's just like a little parcel about as big as your hand and fits into your backpack. So there's less bulk.
So rather than the standard packets, which have been pretty much on the market for years, you've taken all the air out, and as a result, you've reduced the size of the packaging as well. Yeah,
it's basically the size of the meal. This is a single serve meal. The size of the meal is about 15 centimetres long and about 6 to 7 centimetres and a couple of centimetres thick. So it's nice and compact, fits in your bag, a bit easier.
That's good. I mean, I suppose it's one thing. I mean, I'm guessing the weight's probably not going to change from the new packaging to the old, and it's still the same product. And air is pretty weightless to a great extent, but saving that space, particularly if you're trying to get sort of 10 or 12 days worth of food into a pack, that can make quite a big difference on the load carrying you're doing.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Is we do have people that our customers will send us a message saying, I've just got all my food, I'm about to do a trip, can I open up the packets, squeeze the air out, zip seal them back up and put them in our pack? And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you zip seal them up and, potentially put them in some sort of tape seamed stuff sack or dry bag inside your backpack to reduce the bulk of them. That's fine. So the next step for campers is to do that with our packaging.
That'll be good. I must admit, I'm always appreciative of a smaller, more compact packaging. So, I think that'll do really well.
Yeah, I think it will as well. It's you look at what's hanging on the prongs and how can that be done better and how would it suit for hiking? And sure, it looks great on a prong for retail, but the thing that doesn't suit the end user is the bulk of it. So let's get rid of that and pull all the air out of it and still make it okay for retail, but make it better for the end user. Yeah.
That's good. Now, over the last couple of years when we've talked to you and other suppliers, one of the questions I've been asking, mainly because it's a bit of the sign of the times, is the impact of COVID. Now we seem to be a bit more back to normal. We're still coming out of it, but we're moving back to a more regular sort of lifestyle. What sort of changes have you seen in the outdoor industry in the last 12 months? Has it been pretty much business as usual for you, or have you seen many changes that have been something you haven't expected?
So COVID, we had the usual ups and downs, and one thing that we did see a lot of was obviously the outdoor started to drop, but for us, we saw an increase in people for prepping, for people holding food at home in case they need it.
And I must admit, I was one of those people. I think I bought about 20 meals just to cover myself.
Yeah, well, we were doing the same. We had food. We changed our meal plan. Our weekly meal plan was completely changed from it. Buying stuff that was a lot more shelf stable and whatnot. And it's funny because I didn't have any samples or anything at home from Campus Pantry, which, that was the joke with family and friends was, we'll just come to your place because you'll have heaps of food in the garage. So, we saw a big spike in the prepper market and like that disaster market. So we have got a few things on the website that will suit that. And with the school outdoor market that we sell to, we did see, because some of these school camps were closed for a few years, we saw, because our shelf life is 2 years, is what we put on our packets. Because of that 2-year best before date, we saw some of the schools that are very strict on their use bys or best before dates come to us saying we don't have product that we can use. Even though it is okay to use, we're not going to use it.
Yep.
So when everything started to open up again and the school camps came back online, our guys that we deal with there were needing to put through orders. So that's where our products, we do vac, seal and nitrogen flush them, so we can put a longer date on them, best before date on them. So if something does down the track happen for whatever reason, COVID or whatnot, they will have that product in their food shed for a bit longer than the normal. So that was one thing that happened during COVID. It just made us look at our business and what we're doing and how we can change things for the outdoor industry, but also, you know, where we're missing out on business. And that prepper market was one of those. So we've got a few prepper products or disaster emergency products online now. I guess the outdoor industry, which is our industry that we sell to, there's still scope for, like I said, with these new packets, new products going forward. So.
And is Campus Pantry going to be doing more with the snack range side of things as opposed to the full on meals?
I think so. We've got we want the brand to have good categories. We want to be able to offer a good range, and it does have good categories, and being able to have that pantry range of ingredients so you can cook your own trail meals that's pretty cool, because you can cook so easily with that. With the snacks, we have been talking about some new stuff there. When we have a dinner party at home, we do spiced pears with vanilla ice cream. So we have we soak the pears in maple syrup with cinnamon and fresh ginger, and then serve them warm with vanilla ice cream, which is pretty cool. So we freeze dried some of those pears the other day, put those through the dryer, and they turned out unreal. So that'll come through in the snack range, and for those pears, you could use them for breakfast. So you could cook them up with porridge. You could also have them as a snack, and you just eat them straight out of the bag, or you could have them as a dessert option if you're wanting that. So they're really tasty.
I must admit, I'm always a fan of pears. If I've got a choice, pears is pretty much close to the top of my list after, say, mango. But it's everyone always does apples, but pears are the harder one to find.
Yeah, it worked out really well. The maple syrup we could have drained a bit more off, so we've got a few more tests to do with it. Put it through the dryer a few more times and see what we can do there. But the flavour is pretty good. Everyone that tried the samples was very impressed. And talking about breakfast, we've just launched a couple of new breakfasts as well with the quick oats, and they're a double serve porridge with freeze dry fruit, and we've got a couple of local hemp growers down here in Lonnie that we're dealing with, so we put hemp in there as well. They've just gone live. I'll have to send you some, Tim, to try.
That'll be good.
Height. Yeah, one's got blueberries in it, which makes it turn bright purple, looks like something out of Willy Wonka, and then the other one's an apple and banana. So they're all ready to go and online. And then the hemp hearts, you've got your all your vitamins and minerals, omegas and protein, and your fibre and stuff that you get from hemp. So just a point of difference, and it's not just another breakfast on the market. It's using local ingredients. So we've also been talking to the guys out at Van Diemen Creamery, Van Diemen's Land Creamery, which is an ice cream shop just between out near Deloraine, basically, from Lonnie. It's on the way to Cradle Mountain from Launceston. It's on the main highway.
Yep.
And we freeze dried about 6 or 7 of their ice creams, put them through the dryers to see how they'd turn out, and they've turned out incredible. The flavour is spot on. So they've got award-winning ice creams and all these different flavours. They've got 40 to 50 different flavours. So if you are going past, you've got to stop in because it's incredible ice cream. So we are looking at doing like a co-branded product with them, where it's the Campers Pantry, obviously, to the hikers sitting on top of a mountain, and you just eat it straight out of the bag. So it'll be a co-branded with Van Diemen's Land Creamery at some point, which is pretty exciting. We've just got to figure out what the best way to put it through the dryers, and either do it in, we're talking about either put it in an ice block tray or some sort of tray that we can pop out and then blast chill before we put it up onto the trays for the freeze drying process. So that's something to look forward to. And everything all the samples that we've done of their ice cream have just been unbelievable.
All right, so we've been talking with AJ from Campers Pantry. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Tim.
So in talking to Campers Pantry, while AJ did actually say that they're releasing or in the process of working on 30 new products, I think the thing that was most exciting for me was the fact that they're going through and vacuum sealing their food. I think if you go into an outdoor store and look at the meals, in most cases the bags look, well, they're different colours and different logos and things like that. They're all roughly of similar sort of size. And I've had situations where I've carried anything up to 12 days worth of food. And when you get 12 days worth of freeze-dried food, which doesn't weigh very much, but it does actually take up a bit of bulk. And by reducing the size, that can have quite a big impact on the size of the pack that you need to carry. 12 freeze-dried meals takes up a lot of space, and certainly getting them down in size to, as AJ said, I think size-wise, he told me they're roughly around about 12 centimetres long by about 6 centimetres wide by a couple of centimetres thick. That's probably around about a third of what an uncompressed bag would take up. So it means really you can fit probably 3 bags in for what used to be only the space of 1 bag. So again, that's something that's going to be really good to see coming onto the market. He also talked about the ice cream. And again, there has been you can pretty much freeze dry anything you want. If you can think about it or if you can eat it, it can be freeze dried. But in a lot of cases, what's often been done in the past when you're talking about freeze drying ice cream is to use really cheap ice cream. And they were talking about partnering with a Tasmanian company that produces high quality ice cream and freeze drying that. And from what he was saying is the quality is just there. And not that it was included in this podcast, but the manufacturer of this ice cream had taken some of this freeze-dried ice cream and dipped it in chocolate, and apparently it was pretty amazing. So I think this is something that I'm very much looking forward to coming out on the market, and I think it's the sort of thing that, do you wait till dinner time or do you eat this as a morning snack? I don't think there's anybody, unless you do have a dairy intolerance, it's not going to appreciate this when it does come to the market. So for our next interview, we're talking to Andrew Patterson, the Australian and New Zealand distributor for the North Face. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Oh, hi, Tim. Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
Okay, so we haven't talked to you before in relation to one of these annual gear reviews. I suppose while North Face is probably a relatively well-known name, can you provide a bit of a brief overview about what North Face does, particularly in relation to hiking?
Yeah, no worries. Well, I guess probably just start with a little bit of background on the North Face for listeners that maybe aren't familiar with the brand and put it in some context for them. But yeah, the North Face has been around since 1966, so sort of coming off 55 years now, so one of the oldest outdoor brands in the world. And they really started with that desire to fill a need for technical and outdoor apparel and equipment that wasn't readily available in the 60s, and getting people connected with gear, and also with the knowledge of how to use that gear and get out in the outdoors and be safe and make the most of the outdoors. And very early on, they started manufacturing equipment. So again, looking for gaps in the market and filling niches and needs that weren't being addressed at the time. So, technology developments like not that they invented down jackets, but really developing down jackets, lightweight, packable warmth, things like the Oval Intention tent, which was, one of the first geodesic design tents, which at the time, was still using A-frame, two-pole A-frame tents were the norm. And then the North Face, partnering with Eastern Aluminium, launched the Oval Intention, which was that, the tents we know and use a lot today in the outdoors, where we have those thin aluminium poles that make lovely shapes and give us a lot of internal comfortable living space and lots of room in our tents for not a lot of weight. They perform really well. So that's, I guess a little bit of a potted history there. And today, I guess the brand really provides a whole spectrum of outdoor equipment and apparel. So we make, a full range of tents, backpacks, sleeping bags, through to, your head to toe apparel assortment as well, from outer layers, insulation, base layers, through to footwear. They really cover it all for that outdoor consumer. I think from a hike perspective, it's an interesting space for us. We've got very rooted in that sort of mountaineering climbing space is a very active space for the brand, and then it's sort of the product that trickles down from there. So I guess jacketing is a really key part of what we do, and that starts with shells and outer layers. So we have plenty of options there, and also your mid layers and your insulation. So lightweight, packable down, fleece, your heavier, bulkier down jackets for colder climates as well, depending on where people are going.
All right. And certainly from my perspective, North Face has been a name that I've known for a number of years, and certainly for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been using North Face jackets. Both myself and my wife have been using North Face jackets as our go-to jackets for our hiking adventures. So I think it's a name that's familiar, either being carried by a number of stores around the country or in the standalone stores that you have scattered around the country as well.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a good broad distribution network for sure, up to 10 stores in Australia and New Zealand now, and they're our flagship or our branded standalone stores. And then, quite a network of wholesale retailers as well. And within that network, we've sort of got your big box, outdoor retailer, through up to our specialty retailers that are catering to those customers that are looking for that really specific technical, whether it be mountaineering apparel or particularly at the moment, a lot of people pushing into, discovering backcountry skiing for the first time, so that's something we're seeing a lot of growth in, and a lot of people asking more about that kind of product. So we're, trying to make sure we've got distribution in the places where those people are, and everyone's accessing the outdoors in kind of different ways at the moment, and lots of new people discovering the outdoors. So I think there's plenty of places for people to access the brand, depending on what level of from enthusiast newly discovering the outdoors through to seasoned grizzled mountaineering kind of people.
Okay. Now, I think like you, probably like every other supplier and manufacturer, has probably had a difficult past few years with COVID in particular, and the flow and effect with supply chains. But what's been the key items that you've either released over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, and if you're able to tell us what exciting things do we have to look forward to in the coming year or so?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, COVID definitely really timed itself well for us. That we had a couple of fairly significant product launches, and it's not so much in the last 18 months, but definitely in the last couple of COVID years, I guess. So starting late 2019, early 2020, the brand launched its new outerwear fabrication called Futurelight. So that was one of the biggest product developments the brand had embarked on in quite some time. Previous to that, they'd sort of talk about the big launches of synthetic insulation with Thermoball. Prior to that was kind of the previous really big launch. So Futurelight was really quite revolutionary for us in that it was trying to really battle that breathability aspect of our waterproof, breathable fabrics. I mean, there's obviously market leaders in that space and plenty of different types of fabric around. And the North Face has always had, a long history of, innovation and really work. They do a lot of work with their athlete teams and expeditions. Athlete tested, expedition proven is really a mantra that the brand kind of lives by, and is always looking to develop gear that will allow athletes to do what they do in the mountains, but also pass that on down through to the end consumer. So Futurelight came from that, and like I said, really looking to shake up the waterproof, breathable space and give us something that breathed a lot more than the current offering on the market. A lot of people, we're familiar with our waterproof, breathable fabrics, and they definitely are great at keeping water out, but often you can end up particularly in our conditions down here. We've got a very high humidity in a lot of places. We end up getting quite damp on the inside as well. It's such a challenge, and it's really that that staying dry is what keeps us safe in the outdoors. As soon as we sort of get damp on the inside, where we're starting to head down that road towards hypothermia and those kind of complications. So the North Face developed Futurelight as a nano woven membrane. So they've got complete control over the membrane. So it's a classic kind of sandwich fabrication with a membrane and then face fabrics and backer fabrics, like we know with lots of other 3-layer fabrics on the market. But what they did differently was using this nano weaving technology to lay down a membrane that they have complete control over the density of that membrane. So they refer to it as being a tunable membrane. So they can vary the thickness and the openness of the weave of that membrane depending on the kind of end use that the garment's going to be designed for. And then also being able to layer whatever face fabric and backer fabrics they want on top of that to, again, work better for the different end use that it might be going to be used for. So like a lightweight running shell might be designed to be really super, super breathable and very thin, whereas our heavier duty mountaineering shells might trade off a bit more on the breathability and focus a bit more on a durable, heavyweight fabrication. So that was our biggest launch that we've done in the last few years. And that fabric is, in very different forms, runs through a lot of our higher end products. So, we've got lightweight running shells in our Flight Series range, through to sort of general hiking shells in our general outdoor range, and then into our high-end mountaineering and skiing product. So that's been really exciting. Certainly, we've all kind of been enjoying using it and testing it the last few years and trying to get out it as best we can, thanks to COVID. But I was just down skiing in Thredbo this week and had a good mix of conditions. Nice sunny day on Wednesday, and then a little bit wetter, softer, drizzly conditions yesterday. And certainly the comfort levels of those fabrications I find really, really good. Particularly, I'm someone that runs quite warm. I'd say I run quite a hot motor and generally find the limit. Quite often we'll have a shell off very quickly if I don't have to have it on. But I've certainly found with the Futurelight fabric, you can keep it on for a much longer period of time. And I think the first piece I really used was some of our ski shells in that fabric a few years ago, and it's a really lightweight, stretchy, almost felt like soft shell, but the pants kind of disappeared into the background. You didn't even think about them. Your movement wasn't sort of impinged. Quite a stretchy fabric, and I was like, oh, this really is a great option for getting outside and not sort of being held back by fabrics, which has been good.
I must admit, it's most people don't seem to think about rain gear and protective shells as being a particularly sexy sort of thing. It's always about the packs and the tents.
Yeah,
but I think certainly I've got the same sort of issue as you, that even though we get snow in Australia, it's not really that cold. And I find that I will often get, even though it might be snowing or a heavily snowed area, I find I've stripped a lot of layers off because I am feeling I'm starting to warm up too much. So having things that provide the ability to keep you dry but also don't overheat you is something that I always tend to look for, particularly from a hiking perspective.
Yeah, it's so crucial, and it's totally. People don't sort of think of their apparel as equipment. And someone was telling me about one of the new footwear brands the other day, and they refer to their shoes as equipment. They call it equipment, which I thought was interesting, an interesting take on it. Yeah, the key thing with what they've done with Futurelight is build a very high degree of air permeability into the fabric. So you actually, depending on the garment, but on some of the the lighter stuff, you actually you can feel air moving through it. So it's still classed as windproof. It sort of ranges about 0.9 in a CFM rating, where some most waterproof fabrics are generally around pretty much a 0 CFM. There's no air kind of moving across or through the garment. But yeah, about 0.91, it does allow just that sort of some air to move through that does take away, help it to breathe and move moisture out of the garment. So yeah, it really is quite exceptional compared to what I've been used to in the past. So yeah, that's been great. And we still use a lot of our other in-house brand waterproof fabric called Dryvent, which is sort of in the lower price points and very common. But yeah, Futurelight has definitely been the big push for us the last few seasons. And like I say, yeah, great timing. Our real big season for it was going to be winter 20, and obviously we're all in varying degrees of lockdown and things like that. So that's been challenging. And then more recently, our new footwear sole technology or platform called Vective was probably the latest product technology that we launched also in the time of COVID, but that's been really well received as well. And yeah, also, like, a lot of people don't give their footwear that much thought either. I think, like, it's sort of often when I was working in stores, like, people would come in and they'd sort of again want to look at those higher priced items or those more sort of seemingly technical items, and we'd often try and really start people with, like, when we're kidding them out, it's like, well, let's start with your shoes, because that's what you're going to spend all your time on if you're hiking and generally outdoors. There's a lot of time spent on our feet, so getting that good foundation under our feet is obviously really key to having a good time in the outdoors. And the North Face, people maybe aren't that familiar with the fact that we do make footwear, and I guess we're probably not that sort of first to mind in that. When I think hiking, I obviously grew up as a child of Scarpa boots and that very traditional rugged leather hiking boot that we a lot of us were put into in our early hiking experiences, and still very common today. And yeah, I think we're a little bit more on that softer, more versatile footwear angle, and a lot sort of driven by technology from running shoe technology. So, those lighter, more cushioned shoes, but still trying to find the right balance of support and comfort. And so Vectiv is the latest iteration of that for the North Face, and it's our sole unit. It's a sole unit technology. Again, it's not one thing that sits in one pair of shoes. It runs through a majority of our footwear range now in different aspects. But really, the kind of key ingredients of it is that it has a supportive plate, which isn't new in our outdoor shoes. There's lots of different plate technologies around, but what the Vectiv technology does, it puts it at the top of the sole unit, so it sits directly under your foot, as opposed to sort of being between the midsole and the sole unit, or in the midsole. It's right under our feet. In some shoes, in some of the high-end running shoes, it's made from carbon, but then it's sort of varying levels of types of plastics as you move down the line. But it's a 3D molded plate that gives a lot of support to the foot, so that sort of lateral support to give us structure when we're on uneven terrain, which is obviously really important if we're carrying packs and loads on our backs or moving over rough, rocky terrain. But it also helps to give us some forward propulsion as well. And it's kind of a little bit, it sounds a bit weird to talk about it, but when you sort of try the shoes on, you definitely feel it do kind of move you forward, and that comes in from the midsole unit that sits under that foot plate is kind of like on a rocker profile that allows for I guess an optimal use of our natural gait and a good foot strike, but it does sort of really roll you forward as you kind of come down and step off. It gives you a nice sort of flow to your stride, be that running or hiking, and then the final piece of the Vectiv story is our surface control sole unit, which is it's a rubber sole unit. Most people sort of probably don't give that much thought to their sole units either, but the North Face has a lot of in-house design and laboratory testing, and they developed this surface control compound and sole unit design specifically for their shoes, and they're very confident that it stacks up well against the sort of name brand sole units that we're all familiar with on the market. And the really cool thing as well, they're using a 40% bio-based rubber in those sole units. So really kind of trying to start to bring renewable content into footwear, which is probably one of those areas that's maybe the hardest to really start to move towards those more recycled, renewable production methods in shoes, because there's just so much going on in those shoes under our feet. So yeah, we have a family of running shoes, which is where Vectiv was launched, but then now that's rolled out to our hiking shoe collection as well, which we have our Explorus, Vectiv Explorus range, which comes in mid cuts and low cuts, leather fabrications, as well as sort of full synthetics. And they launched sort of early, probably around summer 2020 into 21. So they've been in the market for a few seasons now, and feedback's been great. A lot of good take up in the running space. Trail running is still a very niche market, I think, in Australia, but it's something that we've been supporting in for a long time, and developing product for trail runners. And we've seen that technology move from trail running into our hiking footwear as well. And I guess I was saying that having those sort of lighter, more versatile hike shoes is where we sit, as opposed to that. I'm trekking in deep southwest Tasmania for 2 weeks with a really, really heavy pack on my back kind of thing. I think there's probably more specific footwear for that outside of our range. But having said that, I remember a friend of mine hiking in Tassie for 2 weeks in a pair of Dunlop KT26s when they're hiking. The hiking boots they were in gave them horrendous blisters on the first day and didn't come out of the pack for the next 2 weeks. So yeah, I think it's that everyone's got their levels of experience, and people are happy to make those trade-offs depending on what they know and what they're familiar with and how confident they are.
Okay. So that's the key items that have come out over the last couple of years. Have you got anything new and exciting that we can look forward to either in this coming season or the coming couple of seasons?
Yeah, I think definitely with COVID, I think what we've seen with our range is definitely a sort of sticking to the tried and true pieces. We've certainly been fairly stable. We do have some quite cool mountaineering packs that have just come out in the last season or so that are the newest things for us. Coming up, I think it's a bit of a watch this space there. We've certainly seen the CADs for our fall 23 range that we will start showing to our wholesale accounts later this year, which I'm definitely excited about some stuff in there, but too soon to talk about that. But I think the thing for me that I think one of the things that's definitely been happening a lot that again doesn't get talked about, maybe isn't as sexy as new technologies, but what the North Face and I guess a lot of the other outdoor brands have been doing is just really focusing on that recycled and renewable content in their manufacturing and supply chain lines, and that's certainly like a lot of the work the North Face has been doing the last few years and into the next few years is really focused around that goal. And for the North Face, it's a goal of being 100% recycled or renewable fabrications for apparel by 2025 and 2030 for equipment and footwear. And like last year in apparel, recycled synthetics was 72% of our line, and they're on track to be 81% by the end of this year. So that's kind of that. I guess it's not new technology that is maybe as crucial to what we do in the outdoors, but I guess in terms of longevity of product and doing the right thing by the environment, it's definitely a big part of what the brand's focused on. And things like moving towards non-PFC DWRs and those kind of technology changes have been big focuses because the way traditional DWRs have been applied to fabrics is not the way the non-PFC DWRs are applied, and so there's been just big shifts in factories and supply chain production technologies has sort of been happening in the background a lot more the last few years, I think, as well.
No, it definitely seems to be a trend, and particularly with COVID, I think people have gone away from bringing out a new tent every season or a new pack every season and focusing on getting the environmental friendliness of their range. And that seems to have, even before COVID hit, that was a direction that everyone was heading. And it's good to see the companies that have been around for quite a while looking at how they can make their products have less of an impact on the environment. So it's to be applauded.
Yeah, I think everyone's got a vested interest in if without a good natural environment to go and use all this, use the gear we sell and make is kind of pointless. So yeah, it's definitely something that the North Face has been doing that for a long time. It's been part of their kind of ethos since day one, but certainly the pace of it has ramped up. It's ramped up a lot, probably at least the last 5 years. And a lot of that's been to do with just getting the production, the ability to do it, or even, a few years ago, they were talking about just trying to source enough recycled polyester and nylon was not easy. And with the size of the brand that the North Face is, like to shift I guess a key franchise. They're sort of really focusing on moving key franchises one at a time into recycled fabrications. They had to be certain that the volume of recycled material was going to be on hand to be able to do that properly. So I think there's a lot of sort of things that we don't see or take for granted that a lot of people are working on to get right, which takes time for sure.
All right. Now, one thing that's relatively unique to the North Face is that you have grants for outdoor adventurers. Do you want to tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, for sure. I think exploration is something that's integral to the North Face, and it's our sort of tagline of never stop exploring has been with the brand for a long time, and the brand's ethos has always been about enabling exploration from the early days of getting the right gear to people, but also giving people knowledge to get outside and use it appropriately. And I think it could be 10 years maybe now, probably not far off 10 years. In Australia, we set up the North Face Adventure Grant, partnering with OzGeo, and that is a program that provides grants of equipment and funds to people that have got expeditions or unique trips that they want to go on. So there's a window opens for applications each year, and people can send in their grant applications for trips that they want to do. And we have a panel of the North Face team and some external people that help to select the winners of those grants. And it's been really cool to see the evolution of that over the years as well, because it used to be sort of we'd pick one big project each year, and the last few years we've started to kind of pick more projects, but sort of smaller projects, and particularly under COVID, there sort of had to be more local projects as well, which has been quite interesting to see some of the cool things that people have been pitching to come up with there. But also just this week as well, our North Face team in Australia and New Zealand are really excited to announce the launch of the Explore Fund in Australia and New Zealand, and that's a program that's been running in the US since 2010. And the cool thing about that fund is it's designed to provide grants to community organisations that work to support access and equity in the outdoors, to try and open the outdoors up to groups and people that may traditionally not feel that they can engage in the outdoors or they're welcome in the outdoors. So it's a really great initiative. There's a separate council to us that's been picked by its external people that are responsible for managing those grants and working with community groups and promoting fair access and equity in the outdoors. So yeah, we're really excited about that. It's been something that's been in the works for a long time. So our team that are behind that are really, really happy that that's finally come to light, and looking forward to seeing the groups that we partner with there, and all in the name of getting everyone outdoors and enjoying it.
It's good to see outdoor companies putting something back into it, and it's, those grants that you mentioned are excellent ways of doing that. I'll actually put the link to those grants in our show notes. So if anyone's interested in taking those up, I'll have the resources available to click through and find out more about them.
Awesome. That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, so we've been talking to Andrew Patterson from the North Face. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk with us.
No worries, Tim. It's been a pleasure to join you. Thank you.
Now, for us, this is the first time we've actually gone through and interviewed North Face, and it's a bit of an interesting sort of company. As Andrew mentioned, this is a company that's been around for roughly about 55 years. So there's only a handful probably of companies that have the longevity that North Face has. And I think it's a product that most people will recognise. Their jackets in particular are something that's really well known. And while the North Face has gone through and opened up dedicated North Face stores in various cities around Australia and New Zealand, they also supply into just about every outdoor store in Australia. It's rare that you go into an outdoor store and they don't stock North Face. We've been big fans of North Face jackets, and both Jill and I use the Thermoball jackets. We just like them and have continued to like them for the last 6 years. They just fit us well, they last well, and they do their job very well. But in addition, that they're a company that also do other products which possibly aren't as well known. So things like the Vective footwear, which has been out probably for about 12 to 18 months now. And it's unfortunately for me, they don't make my size 15 that I need to be able to wear. But I love the design of them. They've got a rocker style design. And if you have a look at the image in the show notes, it'll be really obvious what I mean by rocker style. So have a look at the photos and I'll explain that a bit more in depth. I like the idea of the design and what they've done with them. And I'm looking forward to hopefully at some stage down the track that they will make them in my size. But it certainly, if they had have made them in my size, it would have been something that I definitely would have been keen to try out. In addition, they're talking about bringing new materials out in relation to waterproof shells or outdoor shells, whether they be windbreakers or waterproof. And I think this is one of these things that people, when they're buying rain jackets, don't really seem to put much thought into it. It's let's just buy a raincoat without actually necessarily looking at the materials that go into making them. You grab 5 jackets, put them together, and they all look very similar, and it's pretty hard to tell them apart in a lot of cases. And what it often comes down to is the features that are being offered and the technology that goes into making the material. And being able to get a shell that is breathable and waterproof at the same time is a hard ask. And they've certainly brought ranges of material and ranges of product out that fits this sort of category. So we're hoping to be able to go through and test some of these over the coming months just to see how they pan out. But certainly they look really good and they have some very good features on them. So I'm looking forward to testing them out. As they mentioned through there in the interview, that the North Face has been in an environmentally considered and friendly company for many years. But funnily enough, they haven't really made a big thing about it. They've just gone through and done it and haven't made a big fanfare about it. But certainly they're starting to talk about it a bit more because they've been doing it for years and they are continuing to look at ways of improving their product and making them more environmentally friendly. So it's a good thing to see. And the last thing I'll mention on North Face is their Adventurers Grants. This company, along with Australian Geographic, has been the only 2 companies that I'm aware of that do these annual grants that help people achieve some adventures that they may or may not be able to do. It's like any grant process. You need to submit an application and tell a story that meets the requirements. And certainly it's the sort of thing that if you're having trouble getting out and about, and in particular their focus is leaning towards getting groups out that wouldn't necessarily be able to get out. So have a look at go to the links in the show notes and see if this is something that you or the group you work with may find this of benefit. But all the details are there that tell you what they're looking for and what you need to submit to be considered for these grants. So we're now talking to Dave Casey from Outdoor Agencies, the Australian importer of Osprey packs. Thanks very much for taking your time to talk to us.
Hi, Tim. Good afternoon. How are you going?
Okay, so looking over the last couple of years, certainly the impact of COVID worldwide has sort of slowed the release of a lot of new models. But the thing that I've been most excited to see released just recently in Australia is the new Osprey, Exos and Asia range. Tell us a bit about those new packs.
Yeah, so I guess both those families, or the Exos Asia family, the Exos being the men's and Asia being the ladies, have been in our range for many, many years. They generally have an update every 3 to 4 years, probably every 4 years. And 2022 was the due date for a update to those bags. So they've had some nice updates to make them a more comfortable, more user-friendly pack, and is also more sustainable in their design as well, which is a great update.
I must admit, I had a chance to look at them, in fact, only yesterday when I was down in Melbourne and managed to sit there and play with them and have a good look at them. Cosmetically, I think they look quite nice. It's sort of, I know it's only a minor thing, but they look like a much nicer, more modern looking pack, and it's more, as I said, it's purely cosmetic, but I just like the look of them.
Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people do comment on that sort of thing, that generally Osprey bags, they can, I wouldn't say date, but you can sort of tell each generation by just those slight tweaks to the graphics. And all of our retailers and all of our customers have all definitely had that similar sort of feedback. They look really, really nice, and all colours look great, and there's no real colour they go, oh, that's not a very nice colour, I won't have that, I won't buy that one, and having to choose between three colours, because all three colours are really nice, and the styling and that design is a very nice update. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's been interesting, and this is probably a broader question or broader response across the whole of the Osprey range, that lighter coloured grey has become a choice over the last few years in a range of packs. And I think the bright colours, while they can be really good, whereas grey or even the blues and the blacks tend to be less upsetting if people don't like the leery colours.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess definitely when we look at our sales, blacks and blues tend to be the stronger sellers. A photographer will always like a nice bright colour. If you missed and want to take a photo of a backpack, something that's nice and bright and pops. So our, I guess, inverted commas, marketing colours tend to be nice and bright, and that will usually draw you to the pack wall or look at that image and go, wow, it's an awesome looking bag. But then quite often you'll walk away with a blue or a teal or a grey or a black bag. Tends to be that sort of stronger seller. But yeah, definitely, I think all colours are nice, and there's definitely, I guess, those sort of prosumer photographers out there, or people who think they are good photographers, and definitely they sort of lend towards having that sort of nice bright colour as well. But definitely, I think all colours are really quite work well.
Now, for me, the changes over the previous model of this pack, and I've owned the two previous versions of these packs, is they've gone through and put the hip belt pockets back on again, and they've also gone through and made a change to the back frame. Tell us a bit about both of those updates to this pack.
Yeah, I guess in the previous version, the hip belt pockets was one thing that everyone came back, said, where are they going? We need them back. We want them back. I understand why Osprey decided to remove them in the first place. They did see it as a slight point of wear and tear. If you're pushing through from scrub or pushing past the sort of rocky ledge, it tended to lead with your hip. So that can take a little bit more abuse. So they're trying to make the bag a slightly more durable, but everyone was happy with the idea of I'm happy for a little less durability and a little bit more weight. Naturally, a pocket has a bit more weight to the bag, but as soon as everyone realised that the hip belt pockets are back, they're like, yeah, hip belt pockets are back. And definitely the harness has had a great adjustment update as well. So the previous version as well, it came in 3 harness lengths, but once you found your length, you couldn't really adjust the length of the harness because it's sort of a sewn in shoulder straps at the harness, at the suspension where it sits there. With the updated version, there's an injection molded ladder which allows around about 4 inches or 15 centimeters of adjustment, so you can really find that perfect fit to fit your torso length once you've found your harness length that you've gone for. So it definitely allows more adjustability once you're on the trail or if in the store or however you're buying your bag. You can definitely adjust the bag to fit you perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad thing. As I said, I looked at this yesterday and thought, this is an adjustable back frame, and which, as you say, the previous models didn't have that option. And being able to provide, while for a lot of people, I typically go for the larger pack. I put it on, I lengthen it out to its longest length because that's the way it works. But it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. Just having that, as you say, that someone might be an inch or two shorter or slightly shorter on the torso, and being able to adjust within each of the different sizings just gives that extra bit of versatility. And I'm assuming it probably adds a tiny bit of extra weight as well. But I think a bit of extra weight to get the additional comfort is well worth it.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the thing. I guess I can understand there's definitely a growing group of hikers or backpackers, bushwalkers, who are counting every single gram and are more than happy with a front bag with no adjustability and ultralight everything. However, there's still definitely a greater cohort of hikers and bushwalkers who do like the idea. I'm happy to carry a little bit more weight, but be in more comfort. If I'm carrying an extra 300 grams of weight in a bag, but if that's a more comfortable experience for myself, why not? So it's definitely, I guess, two sides of the fence you can sit on. But I think that definitely the Exos Asia, they sort of sit on the fence quite well. It's not the lightest bag in the world, but it's not the heaviest bag in the world, but it still gives really good comfort and really good adjustability to find that sort of as perfect as you can find comfort.
I know, looking at it, I'm a keen follower of the US long trails, and from what I understand, this pack family is one of the most commonly seen on the long distance trails in the States, and I think it just has that versatility and durability without being the lightest, but it carries heavier weights than most of the really ultralight packs. And for most people, I'm the same. I don't mind sacrificing a few 100 grams for that additional comfort, particularly when you're doing long distances, carrying slightly heavier weights. It just makes a huge difference.
100%, yeah. I think a lot of people aspire to have that really lightweight pack, and maybe if they're doing a week-long walk, by day 4, that pack has come into its own. But the first few days, it's a bit of a sufferfest to get to that really nice, comfortable level for those sort of super ultralight bags. So having that sort of happy medium, and that's something that Osprey was aware of as well, that this bag is very, very, very popular on the through hikes in the US and Europe, and also very popular in Australia. So they have worked a little bit on the sort of increasing the durability as well. They're using some stronger meshes where the meshes are and pockets and so forth, the stretch mesh, and also some of the mesh that's on the harness, the back panel, as well as some of the seam designs have been tweaked a little bit as well, just to give that extra bit of durability if you are using it for 4 months on the trail in one big hit doing the PCT, and you've got a bag that can sort of handle that use and abuse, which is 4 months of hiking is most people's dream of 10 years worth of hiking spread over 4 months. So the bag is designed to that sort of end customer or end, I guess, bushwalker or user in mind who will be using it for that sort of style of bag trip.
Now, the other thing, I suppose, as well, with the older ranges, there used to be a 38-litre, a 48-litre and a 58-litre size. From what I can see, where Osprey is focusing more on the 48 and the 58-litre sizes in this newest release?
Yeah, in Australia, I guess Australia's cobbled into sort of the inverted commas the rest of the world, Osprey Europe and North America. There's close to a few 100 million people in each of those populations, so they still keep those sort of smaller volumes in there. They sell as a percentage, a small percentage, but when you've got a very large population, a small percent is still a large amount, a relatively large amount. However, in Australia, or the rest of the world, including New Zealand and South America and Asia and so forth, that sort of smaller volume bag wasn't really in high demand, both by end users as well as the retailers. In the Osprey range, there's Talons and Tempest and Stratus and Cirrus and a handful of other styles that sort of sit in that sort of mid to high 30-litre volumes, with both a more back frame or a vented back frame, depending on what you're looking for. So we're sort of happy there with what we've got there. And like I said, the core of our sales are probably the 58, followed by the 48, and then the 38 was a long way behind there, a lot of daylight between the two. So
yeah, I think for a lot of people, it almost pushes it down into the day pack category, or maybe a single overnight if you're lucky. But for most people, it's a struggle to get down that low and still carry everything you need. So
right, yeah, yep. So I think the 58 and 48, as well as the other styles that we have, should keep most people happy with what they're looking for.
Now, what else? Is there anything else that we can look forward to that you're able to tell us from Osprey in the next year or so? Are there any, apart from model upgrades and colour changes, are there any new packs or new exciting things coming out from Osprey?
Yeah, I guess the COVID supply chain issues are sort of continuing. I think most people have found issues in finding some sort of either outdoor bit of gear or a camera, or if they're buying a car. There's been long delays and so forth. So I guess haven't been immune to those sort of things. But saying that, the wheels keep on turning with Osprey and new styles being released. Like you mentioned, the Exos Asia has only really just been released in Australia at the moment. In theory, probably should have released or been launched a few months ago, but just our stock was slow in arriving due to some sort of lockdowns and so forth in Vietnam, where Osprey is manufactured late last year. So that sort of all just snowballed into some delays. But there are some updates due on the way. I guess this time next year, or hopefully closer to early next year, there'll be some sort of extra ultra lightweight backpacks that will be updates to some styles, or maybe redesigns of some styles out there. And I guess during this summer, I should say, there'll be a few updates to some sort of more everyday carry office going to and from work, as well as travel ranges as well. So generally in Australia, our bushwalking, hiking bags to get updated during winter, and our travel updates come through in our summer. And there'll be some running backpacks and some waterproof backpacks as well. So there's definitely always some new things that are exciting, as well as updates, like you've mentioned with the Exos Asia as a good example, that will sort of come through. And just recently we have updated the Atmos and the Aura to coincide with the Exos and Asia. And then there's another bag actually called the Sportlight. And the Sportlight has just been released as well. And that sort of sits between our Daylight, which is a bit of everyone's bag to do everything and anything, jack of all trades, and then the Talon Tempest. So the Sportlight sort of fits in that sort of middle of the ground there between those two styles of bags, depending on what sort of feature set and character. So there's definitely always something interesting new coming out, or good updates. Yeah, good question.
So the Sportlight is I've only seen images on the web. So can you class the Sportlight as a stripped back version of the Tempest?
Yeah, it is a bit more version of the Tempest. Sort of sits in between the Daylight. The Tempest and the Talon has an injection molded frame sheet, which loads and carries very, very well. It's very comfortable. It does mean it's a little bit more expensive than a more basic version of an Athlon frame sheet, it's sort of foam frame sheet. So not everyone needs to carry as supportive as the Talon Tempest needs, or they maybe can't quite justify a $200 backpack. They want something that sort of sits in that sort of mid-hundreds, and that's a bag that can sort of sit and be comfortable for a lot of people, and also fit budgets of depending on what your budget is and how much you can justify spending on outdoor gear. Especially a lot of new hikers joined because found bushwalking and hiking during the last 2 years of COVID lockdowns and staying domestically travelling in Australia. And not everyone wants to spend, I guess, $200 on a bag as their first backpack. That's a great bag, and they just want something that maybe is a little bit less expensive, but still carries very, very well. So that's where the Sportlight sort of fits there. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So we've been talking to Dave Casey from Outdoor Agencies, the Australian importer of Osprey packs, as well as many other well-known brands as well. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Tim. I'm looking forward to hearing the podcast.
Now, our last interview for this podcast was Osprey packs, and this is someone we have interviewed pretty much consistently since we've been doing these podcasts on the annual gear interviews. I'm a big fan of Osprey packs. They're by far the largest pack manufacturer in the world, and there are other very good packs around, but I've just found that Osprey just seem to bring out a range of packs that there's almost something to suit everybody. So certainly my pack of choice for longer distance hikes has very much been Osprey packs over the last 6 years. And I've just having the opportunity to try out some of their newer packs. And it's almost a bit like Back to the Future here, where for a number of years my pack of choice was the Exos pack. I've got the opportunity to have a play with the new released version of the Exos, and in Jill's case, the Asia. And they've made these packs. It's a very similar looking pack as far as structure-wise concerned, but they've gone through and put a series of improvements, and in some cases they've put things like the hip belt pockets, which from my perspective was actually an error when they took them off, and it's good to see those pockets have gone back on again. This is a pack that's likely to be my pack of choice in the next 12 months, all depending on what happens with other releases over the coming year. But certainly it's looking like this is going to be my new pack of choice, as it was previously. Again, Osprey are looking at the materials they're using. They're looking at recycling materials and getting their packs to be as environmentally friendly as possible. But they're also looking at providing additional adjustment features on their packs. So it means that you're not just buying a pack that sort of fits you but not quite. They are putting enough adjustment on their packs to be able to fit someone, not almost, but to a great extent to fit someone, just about everybody. So again, it's a sort of how can we take their product and make it better, and they've certainly gone through and done that. So just to finish off these interviews, I think the thing that for me became apparent in talking to the manufacturers and suppliers that we did today, and also from seeing what's going on in the outdoor industry, there's a few common themes that are very much taking place or taking centre over the last few years. And these include the environmentally friendliness of the products that are being manufactured and produced. And I think from a number of companies, things like North Face, it's always been a focus of theirs, although they've never really made such a big thing about it. But all the companies we talk to and a number of other companies that I'm aware of are all going down the same route of improving the environmental credentials of their companies and going through and trying to make their, not so much releasing lots of new product every year, but making the products that they've got better and more durable and more environmentally friendly overall.
Yeah, so the focus is on lessening the environmental impact, and it probably makes a lot of sense, really, when you think about it, because if outdoor gear is about exploring and enjoying and there's an inherent sort of safeguarding of the environment, it does make sense for those companies to get on board in a big way. And that's happening in a lot of different areas, particularly in relation to using recycled materials. So, taking plastics and reusing them and repurposing them into different fabrics and, then making them into different clothing items.
And I think this is the thing. I mean, there's been a few of, even things like supermarkets these days that occasionally sell hiking and outdoor gear and snow gear and at a really, really cheap prices. And I think what you're getting there, it really is pretty much what you pay for, but you're not getting environmentally friendly gear. You're getting gear that basically you throw out at the end of the process, and there's not very good manufacturing processes that go into a lot of these things.
Yeah, I think there's another angle to this though, because there's also the ability to map the supply chains and make sure that every step of the chain is as appropriate as possible. And I use appropriate because it's not just about environmental issues. It's to make sure that people are being employed properly and paid properly and not being exploited. So there's a whole bunch of aspects that sit behind this as well.
That leads on to the next thing that's been a common theme, although it may not be apparent to many people, the supply chain issues created by COVID over the last few years. And it's I find it really interesting. I mean, most of you are aware, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I have fairly large feet, and I do struggle to find size 15 US footwear. But so far this year, I've had a good success at actually getting that product.
I'm just thinking about the environmental impact of your feet, Tim.
But I think one of the things that I've certainly noticed is that there are a number of companies who have traditionally produced size 15 footwear that aren't doing it this year. And I think it's because the supply chain issues, and they've got to focus on where their market is. And given that, if you're a size 12 and above US footwear, you're in the 2% of the population that have that size feet. So they're focusing on the bulk of the population.
So what that means for people with big feet, they've either got to grab the shoes and multiple pairs as soon as they see them, and probably not all, but wear them forever.
One of the biggest things from my perspective, as far as the impacts of the supply chains, has been the supply of tents. There are limited suppliers of good quality tent poles, and this has probably been the big limitation, that tents that we've recommended and used for a number of years, we're struggling to find in good quantities and good supply. And this has meant that they've almost appeared to go off the market. And it's not because they're not being made anymore. It's just because it's a struggle to get hold of them. And I know that's the case even for the companies like Cedar Summit. Their range of tents, which they introduced over the last couple of years, it's a struggle to get hold of good quantities of them because they just sell so fast, and the manufacturing processes just can't keep up with them. So I think this is something that you may not be so obvious and may not be aware of, but it does mean that if you're struggling to find something, it's because we are having issues because of COVID, issues because of other international things that are going on that are making it hard to come across. I think the other thing that is also occurring is that we haven't had as many new products come onto the market over the last few years. It went through a stage for many, many years that you'd almost expect new lines and new models and new brands to be regularly released and regularly come out onto the market. That certainly has slowed down now. I think that as the focus shifts towards being environmentally friendly, they're shifting the supply chain over to producing product that is more durable and longer lasting and can be recycled. And as a result, that means they're not releasing as many new products as they used to.
Yeah, and I think the benefits of that is less waste. This is not necessarily the fashion industry, but the fashion industry has a very poor reputation, and huge amounts of clothing go to landfill that have never been worn. So, less styles, more focus on improving the manufacturing and decreasing the impact of that manufacturing, I think is a good thing.
And last but not least, outdoor meals. We certainly, for many, many years, we really had a limited range of suppliers in the outdoor meal market in Australia. That certainly has increased over the last few years, and companies like Campus Pantry is a good example of that. And again, they in talking to AJ, he was saying that they're in the process of releasing 30 new products.
Wow.
Which sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about meals, that may not be as big as, if someone released 30 new models of tents in 1 year. But they're also looking at the product they've got and how they can improve on that. So again, it's not just about increasing their range, but it's also increasing the quality, or in this case for Campus Pantry, reducing the physical size, which means particularly if you are looking at putting range of food into your pack, and I have carried on some hikes anything up to 12 days worth of food, and by far the biggest space waster, if you like, is the meal packets. It's just that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of pretty much reduce or almost halve the size of the packets that are available has a huge impact on not so much weight, but on bulk that you're carrying in the pack.
Yeah, so, that'll be good. That'll be good to see.
Yeah, and I think it's I think there's only so much you can do. There's only so many different types of food you can release. So many different types of curries and porridges and everything else that is very similar. But it's how you can take those products and make them better. And make them more accessible and easy to use. And I think that certainly that's a trend that's coming through as well. Okay, so that's the interview with suppliers for 2022. It's looking like all things being given equal, 2023, I'll be actually attending the trade shows and doing face-to-face interviews and being able to actually talk to people in real life and handle the products in real time.
It's been a long time. It's been a few years now.
It has been a long time. So I'm looking forward to next year. So I hope this has provided a bit of information and a bit of excitement for the gear freaks out there that like to know what's happening with the outdoor industry and like to know what's going on. As we mentioned, as we talked through the interviews, there is a number of products that is either about to hit the market or about to hit the market over the next 4 to 6 months. So certainly keep an eye on that. And if things that interest you or you're looking at things, it's something to look forward to. That's all for me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Bye for now.
And bye from me.